Mike Twitty, welcome back to the podcast.
Good to be here, Donnie.
Yeah, thanks for being here. The new location. We were just talking about it. You've been on the podcast before, back in June of 2022, and I kind of want to start there and just talk about in your world, what are some big items, big things that have changed over the last couple of years.
Well, obviously the biggie is, the market has slowed down. We've all experienced that.
Yeah.
So we're going through some recalibration of some values within our market. We're over the last year, we've seen some areas where values are still moving upward. We've seen them areas that have flattened, and we've seen other spots where values have started to tail down. Condominiums in particular, because
Yeah.
of the law changes in the last couple of years related to mandatory inspections and reserve requirements, and have caused maintenance fees to rise. The shoe hasn't fully dropped on where those are going to all shake out yet, because all of those haven't been completed. And so if you look at the supply numbers out there for condos, they're already have already tilted towards a buyer's market.
Oh yeah.
And it depends on what building it is, or
That's
what
true,
complex.
right? Yeah.
So again, really important for those that are out there looking for condos to really get all that data related to those associations and know what they're dealing with, so they don't get any surprise assessments coming their way.
Yeah, that's been a big topic the last year, probably, right? I guess year and a half, maybe. And it's created these different pockets of different markets for depending on which condo you're at, whether you're in a high rise, whether you're in a even the 1 or 2 story level condos, right? Like those assessments have gone up. Those values.
They have. They don't fall under that law change.
Yeah,
They're
right.
not. They're not. So they have a little more latitude there, but
Yeah,
still, just the costs of everything have gone up. Insurance is a huge
yeah,
one. So all those associations have been hard hit, and it's caused maintenance fees to pretty much go up across the board.
yeah, yep. You mentioned too, like our market has changed. I think I was listening to our previous episode. We were talking about like supply versus demand, right? Where it seemed like demand had remained steady for a long period of time, which it typically does in real estate. And then the last year or so, I think we've seen demand drop off for probably a variety of reasons: interest rates, just the cost of everything to move, and then supply. So it's allowed supply to creep up, which is,
Right.
I think, a healthier balance of where we were before.
Right. We're closer to a balanced market.
Yeah.
Single family still has less supply versus demand than condominium, which is not surprising. But it is creeping upwards, and could get back to a balanced market. And I'm talking countywide kind of data.
Yeah.
You start getting into areas and neighborhoods and particular subdivisions, and you may already be where you're in a buyer's market.
Yeah.
Just depends on where you're at. So we're seeing a little bit of a mixed bag there. So we're trying to track it all.
Yeah, one of my mentors used to always like talk to me about like this shift in market, and it's like the shift, like the middle of it is kind of like a messy market, right? You have a little bit of everything where
Right.
the seller's mindset is still, a year ago, where it's
Yes.
they want this high value. Buyer's mindset is like, we're not paying these prices anymore, and you get a mix of all that, some clash of egos and stuff.
Yeah, you have those 2 points.
Yeah.
And they got to wrestle over trying to get.
Yeah.
That's when the agent's job really gets tough. That's
It
where
makes
you're
it
really
fun.
trying to get to that meeting of the minds.
Yeah.
In the middle.
Yeah, which is in my opinion, it's a little more fun to bring that, to have that back versus like what we were before.
I agree, and that's what a market's all about. That's when you get to a true market value. I mean,
True.
a lot of times when it's a good arm's length transaction is usually when neither party is happy.
Yeah.
Right,
Right.
because they both had to give something to
bit.
get to that point.
Yeah, and there's pockets of that too, like you mentioned with the condo stuff. Some pockets are, you're still kind of in a seller's market. Some pockets you're in that buyer's market. How is like the increase in values and the taxes and stuff. Like, what is some feedback you've received there, and how have you balanced all of that?
Yeah. That we unfortunately, our duty is to follow the market.
Yeah.
So some people think that we're arbitrarily, changing numbers, and that's not the case. So we're trying to arrive at just market value each and every year for every parcel in Pinellas County, which is about 450,000. So it's a lot of,
It's a big number.
it's a big number. It's a lot of parcels and we've got, about a staff of about 120, and only about half of those are appraisers. So that's a lot of parcels to manage. So we're not going to be right 100% of the time. We have to use statistical modeling and all that to try and get as close as we can. So if people have questions, we encourage them to call, and this is actually the time of year to do that over the summer. Our values are on the website right now, even though trim notices don't come out till next week. We already have all the values on the website, so people can go search their property and take a look. Make sure they've got, the homestead, if they applied, is showing on there.
Okay.
When they get their trim notice, though, that will actually show all of their exemptions. So if they had, low income senior, if they had a disability exemption, those types of things will be reflected on the trim. They're not on the general detail page on the website.
Okay. And so the trim notice comes out, and that is the time, like, if you have any questions or you disagree with the assessed value,
Right.
like, that's when you would.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Just call our office. Our on hold time averages about 8 to 9 seconds. So
That's amazing.
It's not long. During trim season, it could be a little bit longer, but that's normally our average. You'll get to a live person very quickly, and we'll get you over to your area appraiser that actually works the area with whatever your property is and whatever property type it is.
Okay.
And they will get back with you, usually within 24 hours, a lot of times same day, and talk you through exactly what they did to arrive at that number. And it's a great time to have that conversation, because there may be information that the appraiser may not be aware of, because we don't get inside homes, typically. So, we do see photos of interiors and things like that, but if they were listed, but we, generally we don't know everything that's going on inside. And and you got to remember, we get hit from both sides. So we get people that are selling, they want their values higher because they want to maximize their portability. And then those that just bought, they want things low.
Yeah.
Because they're establishing their base year for homestead exemption. So, and we're just trying to call balls and strikes, as we see them, and try and keep it, fair and as equitable as we can. And then the exemptions fall where they may, and so do the assessment caps, like the Save Our Homes cap and the 10% non-homestead cap.
You mentioned like the process of like assessing the value of a property. Like, what is that process, and how do you guys go through that?
So we'll do it in residential terms, because they're a little bit different when we get into commercial.
Okay.
But in residential, I mean, you have 3 approaches to value in appraisal theory. So you have your sales comparison approach, which is your comparable sales. Then you've got cost approach, and you have an income approach. Well, most residential is driven predominantly by the sales comparison approach. That's the biggest driver of giving you a good market indicator.
Yeah.
If it was built within the last 10 years, you can also factor in the cost approach. That can be an important approach then too. But as it gets longer in the tooth, older in age, using the cost approach gets more difficult, because estimating depreciation on that structure gets difficult. It might have had a bunch of partial renovations in all different years, and for us to, without going through the entire house in great detail, it's tough to make those depreciation calls sometimes. So again, we lean predominantly on the sales comparison approach. We'll use hundreds of sales within areas within the area of the subject property, and those go through regression modeling that we run within our office. Yeah, takes into account all the physical characteristics of that property, as well as its effective age, any accessory features it may have, like extra features like a pool, it might have a garage apartment. It might,
Yeah.
different things going on. So all those things feed into our model. Location, view, if it's waterfront, if it has dock, all those things are factored into the model to arrive at a baseline value, and then it gets adjusted based on those physical characteristics of
Okay.
that specific property.
So this model that you guys have, is that something that you guys have built, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we've got there's a model built within each appraisal area,
Okay.
basically.
Okay.
So that's the physical area that we take in, the sales that we think is most representative of the neighborhoods that
property.
comprise that general market area.
Okay. And so that, I'm assuming like that allows you to like do your job, right? To be able to assess so many properties.
That's the only
'Cause
way we can
without
do
that,
it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, we have to do it in scale that way.
Okay.
You got to remember what a fee appraiser does. That's going out and doing
Yeah.
one for a bank for a transaction. They're going out and grabbing 4 or 5 sales, but they get inside the subject, so they get a full interior and exterior inspection typically, and then they have those comparables that they're looking at, but they're doing one property at a time.
Yeah.
And so we don't have the time to do that type of
And
approach.
that the fee appraiser, what's the time commitment for that? Like how much time are they spending to do that job?
It can vary depending on how big that house is,
True.
how complex it is.
Yeah.
Is it a $500,000 house or is it a $5 million house?
Yeah.
So, and obviously the appraisal fee is reflective of how much time that appraiser is going to have to spend on those.
Sure.
So they can vary, but most appraisers are, at least the residential appraisers I know out in the fee world, they're trying to do, at least one a day. Sometimes they'll bunch up their inspections. So they might do several inspections in a day.
Yeah.
And then they're writing up the appraisals after that.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can imagine like if you were doing that approach to 45,
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
no, there's no time.
Right. Now, when we get to the value adjustment board process, that's more like what we do.
Okay.
So if somebody, we have informal meetings, if they call in, and we still don't get to a point where they're comfortable and they think that we're still not, they think we're incorrect, they can file a petition. It's $15. It's an informal process in front of a special magistrate. And those magistrates are hired by the clerk of the court. The clerk of the court's office administers the value adjustment board process. So we have basically an informal hearing before that special magistrate. So the client or their representative can present their information. We present our information, and the magistrate will make a ruling based on that.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. So you mentioned you've been 8 years now, the Pinellas County property appraiser.
It's hard to believe. Yes. This is, I'll finish up my 8th year this year.
Crazy. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
We touched on this before, but you play music as well on the side. Like that's one of your hobbies.
Mm-hmm.
Many people have probably seen you out playing it in public. You mentioned you're playing Ozona Blue later today. And then family life. Like how do you balance all of that and keep all that together?
Right. And I've always been a big believer in balance.
Yeah.
I've seen too many people, tip too far one way or the other. And I've always, whether it's your health, making sure you're taking care of yourself.
For sure.
Because you can't take care of anyone else if you can't take care of yourself first. Yep. But having that work balance and your recreational and your family balance, all that, you just got to carve out time, and you'll feel it when the scale tips one way a little too far,
Mm-hmm.
and you know what, I need to go spend a little more time back over here, and you can feel things start to balance back out. But you're going to ride those waves through life where you're going to have to throw a lot of energy, or you might be starting a business.
Yeah.
And that feels like it consumes all of your time, while you're doing that. But you still got to take those moments and, not forget oh, I got people I got to take care of over here. I need to make sure, things don't get too much dust on them on this side of the scale. So.
Yeah, I heard someone say this, but it's like life is seasons, right? You have different seasons of life, and like starting a new business or starting a family and stuff. And there's, obviously like starting a family, you have new kids and whatnot. Like there's going to be a lot of time commitment that's involved in that.
Right. And if you've got a good family unit, whether it's, husband and wife, or your significant other, or even the way you involve your parents. So they're, as the grandparents of your children, and the way all that functions together, because, a really great, strong family unit like that, they'll all pick up the slack.
Yeah.
When, all of a sudden something pulls, one of those family members away from the core of the group for a while, whether it's, like you said, that business startup, or just, maybe some other work travel or something that happens, or just other life challenges. So, that's why I really like it I love it when we have even staff members that have family in town, because I just see the way their family dynamics work, and they really all pitch in, and it's so great for the kids.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really cool. It's, and like you said, like it's like a flowing movement of water, right? Like there's, you're in different life seasons and stuff, right? That's always changing. I think for me, like being able to take a step back sometimes, and like getting outside is kind of like a way for me to kind of step away and kind of like be able to think clearly about everything that's going on in my life. Do you have something like that, whether it's like sitting down to play a guitar or something that allows you to kind of like clear your mind?
Yes. Obviously music is one of those. Music is the one that, when I actually perform and play, it's the one that totally takes my mind away from anything else.
Cool.
Because I love being on the water. I love boating, fishing, scuba diving, and all that stuff. But even there, even though I try to shut my mind down if I'm out on the water from work or things that I need to take care of, or things that are coming up, I'll still have time to think about them.
Yeah.
Whereas if I'm playing music, there's no room, and it just, my brain becomes totally occupied by making sure it's in a performance mode. It's trying to reach back and pull lyrics out, rapidly. Remember, so much is muscle memory when you're playing guitar.
Yeah.
And there's even muscle memory in the way you sing, just the way your body reacts, and you inflect things and stuff. And so, but no, it's been a great outlet for me. And I didn't even realize how much it was going to help me when I got into public service. I never, fashioned myself a great public speaker. It was not one of my favorite things to do. I had to do it for work. I started doing more and more presentations and dealing with a lot of larger clients, and did more expert witness work and did all that kind of stuff when I was in the private sector. So I had some experience with it, but I was never 100% comfortable with it. And then when I made the leap into public office, I had to do my first 7-minute on the clock against an opponent, in front of 100 people.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it was like, oh my God, this is very stressful and daunting. And I got, my consultant actually gave me the best advice then, because I had a speech, I was, trying to hit my marks, and sometimes I'd do it and be right on. And other times wheel would come off, and it was hard to get back on the rails when I was practicing. And I told my consultant, I said, I don't know if I can do this, because I just feel I'm more of an ad-libber. I'm more of just a flow and go and, or tell a story. And he goes, that's what you should do. He goes, just
don't prepare.
He just said, just tell a story.
Okay.
And I did that for my very first debate type thing, and it worked out perfect.
Nice.
I was like right on, hit all the things I wanted to say. But it came out very natural, because I didn't have to read anything. And it just, so I never knew that all that time behind a microphone singing would benefit me when it came to talking in front of people.
Yeah.
I psychologically just said, it's just another gig. I just forgot my guitar.
There you go. It's funny how we have to like find those things that works. Cause like same thing, like I'll, recording videos for YouTube or something like we were talking about, I, I've gotten to the point where like I want to have like a script written out or something written out. So I know like the points that I want to hit, but when I'm recording the video, like I can't memorize the script or memorize
Right.
every word. I just need to know like the topics that I want to touch
Right.
on.
What I find helps me is to create an outline
Yeah.
and write some of it out. So I might write a bunch of things out, but that just helps get me prepared. But then I rarely ever look at it.
Okay. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it just helped kind of catalog things in my brain.
So you've gone through that process.
It's just part of my preparation.
Yeah. I like that. That's good. Okay. All right. So we touched on, so I want to talk about like your website, right? Last time when we had the podcast, the website was just kind of getting going, just getting launched. And now it's been 2 years. How has that transition gone and those new changes you all made?
It's been great. So the feedback from the public's been incredible. We thought we talked to a lot of other property appraisers around the state, and we said, how much hate mail did you get right when you cut over? And they're like, oh, you're going to get all this hate mail for 3 to 4 weeks. And we got like 2 emails.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Nice.
And everything else was just people, hey, can you help me with this? And we started educating people and triaged those situations very quickly. And people just intuitively picked up, even, long time, people that don't embrace technology the same way as maybe you or I do.
Yeah.
They found it to be very easy, and they were very excited once it really took people, if you spend 5 to 10 minutes, you're going to figure it out.
Yeah.
You have to just invest just that little bit of time, and you familiarize yourself with it. And we started getting all these messages back saying, you know what, I was very skeptical going in. I was so comfortable with the way it was before, but now I can't imagine going back.
That's amazing.
That this is so much better than what we had before. Thank you kind of thing. So
that's awesome. And like I've said before, it truly is like one of the easiest websites to use. And then just from like the information standpoint, like to digest all, because there's a ton of information on the website, right? To be able to digest it all and figure out like what you need, maps and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And there's multiple ways to get to the information you're looking for in most cases. So everybody can kind of get comfortable with the way they like to get there, because everybody works a little bit different, whether you like top down menus or whether you like buttons that come out from the side or, there's different ways to get to things. And I tried to build it based on my experience within the industry for, being in the private sector for 26 years. I'd touched a lot of property appraisers sites. I'd worked with lots of real estate databases and tools all across the country. So I kind of saw the good, the bad, and the ugly, and I wanted to take all the good and then marry that with the latest and, web technology and get a nice user interface that was as intuitive as we could make it, but not get too far into the weeds and make it too flashy.
Yeah.
We wanted it to be clean but still be jam-packed with lots of information.
Yeah. I feel like that's a challenging task to take on. Like building a website now, like I've done it with my PalmerLocal.com website and we're building another one too, but you're right. Like trying to figure out like how it all works and functions and to make it easy and seamless.
Yeah.
And
it's a tough balance. I mean, it was a very iterative process.
Yeah.
We had a skeleton pretty quick, but then as I started to better understand what our web vendor, because they were building out the UI piece.
Okay.
As they were doing that, I had to see some things to then understand what the capabilities were. And then I would see things and say, oh, let's do this, So we did a lot of tweaking as we went through the process. So, I mean, ultimately it was about a 3-year ride to get it to where it is now.
That's incredible.
The last year of it was pretty much in parallel beta and we were getting feedback and we were finding things. We ran them in parallel intentionally because we knew there were going to be components that would break, things that weren't fully functional yet. And we wanted to be able to triage it as we went through and wanted to make sure they had a fully functioning, site on one side and And then it was really more of the in the weeds pieces that we were working on down under the hood. But it was a very fun project, but very challenging.
Yeah. Yeah. And 3 years is a long time to be working on that.
Yes. And we were having lots of meetings on it. So there was a lot of testing.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So let's shift gears and talk about the November ballot that's coming up and Amendment 5 and explaining that and then kind of how that impacts people.
Yeah, that's a tricky one,
Yeah.
When people probably read that on their ballot, they're going to scratch their head and wonder exactly what they're voting for. But so I'm going to start with just explaining homestead for a minute, because a lot of people just think of homestead as $50,000 exemption from assessed value. Well, it's actually two $25,000 exemptions is the way it's structured.
Yep.
So the first 25 applies to all millage rates. So that's all your tax rates that make up all the taxation within your tax district. So that applies the first 25,000, 0 to 25,000 of assessed value. But then you skip a band from 25 to 50,000 where everything is taxed. There's no exemptions in that band of value. Then you have another band of value from $50,000 to $75,000. That is where your second $25,000 exemption kicks in. So that one applies to all millages except for schools. And in most tax districts, schools are roughly a third, 30%-ish to a third of a tax bill. So that portion will never hit schools. So what Amendment 5 does is it takes that second 25,000 and allows it to increase, if voted yes by the 60% of the voters, it could increase at the consumer price index. So it would not have a cap, like the Save Our Homes is capped at 3%.
Yeah.
It would just move with whatever CPI is. It can never reduce. So even if you had a negative CPI year, it wouldn't take the where it had grown to backwards.
Back down, okay.
Right. So that 25,000 can incrementally move with CPI over time to give a little bit more relief on homestead.
Okay. And this is like the response to the increase in values that we've seen over the last couple of years. Is that a way to kind of like balance that?
I mean, between you and I there were a lot bigger homestead exemption bills that were filed.
Yeah.
The legislature didn't pass those. They didn't move. I think the fiscal impact on those was determined to be too great. Mm-hmm. This one, in my mind, is more of a feel-good exemption. It's not going to amount to much in dollars.
Yeah.
It's like a very slowly growing snowball, that over time it could start to have some bigger impact.
Yeah.
Just depending on where CPI is.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. Okay. And then, so speaking of like the taxes and stuff, like trim notices are going to be mailed out this week.
Yeah. Actually,
we kind of touched on that.
So Monday they go out, in Pinellas County. I think Hillsborough probably mailed. I think theirs are already out.
Okay.
A lot of us use the same vendors for trim, so we have to stagger when they drop, because they can't do them all at the same time.
Yeah.
So those will go out. So that's like I said, about 450,000 pieces of mail that go out throughout the county. And so from trim drop, which will be Monday, if somebody did want to file a petition, they have 25 days from that date to file a petition. I also want to let people know that 25-day deadline also sets the absolute limit for a late file homestead exemption. So if you get your trim notice, make sure you look at it and make sure if you filed for homestead, make sure your homestead exemption is reflected on there. If not, contact our office, as soon as you can, because you still have a window of time to get it done.
And that's 25 days from the date that you receive your notice.
It's actually from the date it mails out, because we don't know exactly when they would receive it.
Yeah.
Everybody's mail delivery is a little bit different.
So if you get the mail and you don't have homestead exemption,
right,
contact y'all.
Yeah. I think that 25-day, that 25th day ends on September 13th.
Okay.
So that's kind of that hard line in the sand.
Yeah.
So if anybody has anything, whether it's petition deadline or late file homestead, so they could still go online and do it, but they have to fill out an extenuating circumstances form.
Okay.
But we're very lenient on that. So but that is what alerts us to know that it's a 2024 exemption, because if you go in and apply right now in general without that form, then it's a 25 exemption.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And if you've applied before, you've been approved for homestead exemption already, it continues with the property unless you make changes, correct?
Correct. It's important for people to know if they sell a home, it does not some people think it automatically transfers to their next purchase. That does not happen. You have to make a new application on your new homestead. However, once you do that, you'll just get an annual renewal notice from us. And as long as you haven't rented the property, the status hasn't changed to where you would no longer qualify for homestead, then the homestead stays intact.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So that just brought up another, something I've thought about before, but like, how do you track, like, so a homeowner, they live in the home and then they move out and rent the home, but then the homestead remains in the property. Maybe they move to a different state or something. How do you guys go about like tracking that? Is there a way for you to kind of figure out like, okay, this property is rented out, but it's homesteaded? What do you guys do?
We do. We have an investigations department because, one of our duties is administering those exemptions.
Yeah.
And so we do have to unfortunately shake out some homestead fraud that does occur.
Yeah.
Where some of those get left behind, sometimes intentionally, sometimes not intentionally.
Right.
And we try to, be as taxpayer friendly as we can on those. But usually a lot of times in those situations, sometimes we pick it up because of mailing address changes, things like that. So we have some tools at our disposal.
Yeah.
We also can look across the country and see if people might have a dual homestead. There are ways for us to do that. And then we actually have some tools available related to short-term rental. So we can shake some of that out as well. So just for people out there to understand, if you rent your home with homestead on it more than 30 days in 2 consecutive years, then that is when your homestead's in jeopardy. Mm-hmm. So that's purely how, if you read the letter of the law and the statute, that's how it reads.
So you could it could be your home, your primary residence, you get the homestead exemption, and you can rent it out for, let's say, 30 days. And that's fine.
Right.
But if you do more than that, or more than the 2, is it 2 consecutive or?
Yeah, it's in 2 consecutive years technically. So in theory, so the 30, first year 30. You could rent it more than 30. And the second year, you don't want to break the 30 because then that's going to trigger it.
Okay.
So because you have situations where, okay, I've got to go up north and take care of a sick relative for 6 months, so I'm going to rent my home while I'm gone.
Right.
But my intent is to return, and I won't break that second 30 in the next year. The part people have to watch for is it's all based on a calendar year. So don't make that 6 months rental near the end of the year where you're going to get more than the 30 in 2 calendar years.
2 years. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. So kind of going back to the website, and like for the investor or for the homeowner that's trying to determine like what their taxes are going to increase to, right? Usually it's I think it's more for like the investor that maybe there's a property that they're buying has homestead exemption, and then they're going to purchase it as an investment, knowing that the homestead exemption is going to go away.
Right.
Or they're buying someone's buying a home that someone's been in the property for a long time. The taxes are extremely low, and the taxes are going to go up with the new purchase. Estimating that new tax value. How do you guys go about that?
Right. And we have that tool on our website. So we have the tax estimator, which gets about 11,000 runs a month. So it gets a pretty good workout from both buyers and agents and, people in title and lenders. Those seem to be the ones running it the most. So, Florida's different than the rest of the country. So especially when we have these, new buyers coming in from out of state or first-time home buyers, and even long-time buyers that have owned multiple homes, but they haven't they haven't had to deal with a sale when they've had such a difference between their just value and their assessed value, which has created this big, benefit there. Now in those cases, usually that buyer also has something to sell. So hopefully they have portability to take over with them. But those new buyers coming into the state or a first time home buyer, they do not have that at their disposal. So the best thing for them to do, if you're going to be out there home shopping, I encourage them to run the tax estimator on whatever they're going to do. I hear too many nightmares about people shopping taxes. They'll look at two homes that are priced the same.
Yeah.
And they'll say, oh, I'm going to make an offer on the one that taxes are only $1,500.
Yeah.
Instead of the one that are $4,000. It's like, well, no, actually they're going to be $6,000, on either one of them when you actually purchase it.
Yeah.
So they really need to know that at the front end. And we found the buyers are very resilient to adjusting their expectation as long as you give them enough runway to work it out and figure it out and let them understand how the laws work. What they don't like is when nobody tells them and they get this, now they've owned the house for almost a year. They cross January 1 and now they get a letter from their escrow company saying you're $4,000 short.
Yeah.
And you need to pay it immediately. That's when they end up in our office in tears. Some are worried about losing their homes.
Yeah.
Nobody told me. Obviously, when we from our office, we do everything we can, but we're not the first touch. Those that are involved in the transactions, we really have to depend on them to help us educate in the process. And we have all the tools and resources that we're happy to share with y'all. And we want to make that process, beneficial. And I know all the real estate pros want to do that, and they do that because they want the returning business. Yeah. At the end of the day, it's about, transparency and accuracy, and people just don't want to get, a punch in the nose they weren't expecting.
Yeah.
So.
And do how do you guys estimate that? Like, is there, I'm sure that you have like some sort of formula or whatever. And then is it pretty accurate? Like how accurate is it? Do you know?
So we recalibrate it each year based on the sales data. We awesome. Run the numbers and relook at it because we've had to move it a little bit depending on how active the market was. Because sometimes the market was moving so fast and furious that we had to up the percentage of how we calibrated it, because or else it was running away from the calculator. Yeah. So right now it's calibrated at 85% of sale price. So you plug in the sale price, and that's what it's based on. Again, it's still an estimate. And think about when we value, when we do our statistical models, you're going to get a bell curve worth of data. Yeah. So it's the bulk of that stuff there, the meat. Some of it's going to be a little above, a little below that right in that midpoint of the bell curve. You're going to have outliers, but they're very small percentage compared to. Usually it's because somebody got a really sweetheart deal, and then our estimate's higher than, if they run the estimator, it's going to look low, but when we actually value it, we're probably going to be higher.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And it's just that for the buyer to have that knowledge, right? I think that's the main point. Even if it's a little bit off, it's at the end of the day, it's not going to matter that.
Right. But when you jump from 1,500 to 6,500, and you didn't have any runway to prepare, right? And that gets into legislation we've been championing the last 2 years with the Property Appraisers Association, and we've got. And we'll be working it again this next session. We made a lot of good headway working with both the Florida Realtors Association and with Zillow as the two main groups that we were working with their government affairs and legal staffs on. So what we're trying to do is add some transparency at the online listing platform side, because that's where everybody's going to shop now. Yeah. And they're typically showing the seller's taxes. Yeah. And that can be, as you know, extremely misleading. Yeah. So the way the legislation is written, it basically breaks into two different categories. So if you're what we'll call a more sophisticated platform that has a principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. Full buyer payment calculator. They have those little wheels.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
they break down the payment. If they have one of those, they have the sophistication level to grab the right data that we're working with Department of Revenue. It'll be standing up at the state level. They can grab the accurate data right down to the tax district level.
Okay.
And get a reasonable estimate.
Okay.
If they don't have that, and it's just literally a flat HTML listing page showing seller's taxes, you remove the seller's taxes from the website and replace it with a link to the respective property appraiser's tax estimator.
Okay. And this would be for the state of Florida.
Correct.
Interesting. I like that.
Yeah. So we're just trying to simplify it, but put the tools in their hands.
Yeah.
But not make it a heavy lift for any of the platforms either. Yes, they have to make a couple of technology tweaks, but you were talking about a link or, grabbing a table of data. It's well within their capabilities.
Yeah. Yeah. And it just goes, it goes back to like the education side of it. Like everyone is educated instead of just having this false number out there that is going to change.
Right.
And yeah, I like that. Okay. So you mentioned too, I want to kind of end with this, but you guys have a YouTube channel where people can get education, like how to use the website and just learn more about like what you guys are doing.
Yeah. So we do public education every month. Well, most months. When we get to the end of the year, like November, December, we usually shut it down because nobody really wants to look at property tax law information. But we just yesterday did our trim session. So truth and millage, also known as the proposed notice of property taxes. So we did an hour walkthrough on that. That's on the YouTube channel.
Okay.
You can get to that at pcpao.gov, and up in the right hand corner you'll see the little YouTube icon is one way you can get there. There's a couple of ways through our website you can find it. We also have all the prior sessions on all the different topics. And we've got website demos, tutorials. We've got real estate professional sessions that give real estate pros some more deeper dive tools. We address in our presentations common missteps that people often make surrounding maybe doing a DIY deed and messing up their homestead. Things like that. So we have a lot of great information in those videos, and we'll continue to put those out. And we spend a lot of time, at Pinellas Realtor Organization, speaking to the crew there. In the past, we've even done Florida, the local bar associations. We've done CE with them as well, and we're looking to get back into that. We actually want to get where we're able to do CE for pretty much all the real estate disciplines.
Okay.
Because what we do is a kind of a unique thing, and we are definitely experts in what we do, but all those industry experts touch it in some way. And whether it's insurance, construction, everything that touches real estate ends up at our website at some point or using some of the data from it.
Yeah.
And if we can help in the CE effort, I think it could go a long way.
Yeah, I like that. That's super helpful. And it just goes back to the education, right? The more people are educated, the better decisions that they can make. Yeah.
Yeah. And that helps me take my staff of 120 and make it grow exponentially if I can get, people out there spreading the good word.
Yeah, I like that. Mike, thanks for being here. It's been fun chatting with you.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me once again.